Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's Tuesday morning. I've got to water everything today, so planning for videos for this week is non-existent, but I thought if I stick the camera up there we can do a one shelf rack at a time for at least one of the shelves as I go round, and then I can put the video away for when we get a gap, if we ever get a gap. It might get posted later today, I don't know. So I don't want to mess about. I have got a lot to do, and everything's getting a flush today that's getting watered today, which is holy clay pots and normal pots minus the cooler, shadier sorts, you know, the Odonts and the Masdevallias, because they haven't long been done. But it's everything else basically, and I'm starting over here. That's how I water. I start there and go round till I get to here and I've finished. So that's the shelf we're doing basically. And we'll have a chat and a quick look at each plant as it passes the camera basically. And that's starting with this little bulbophyllum that was a freebie from Spice Exotic. I haven't even looked up what the blooms look like. It's not something I'm really interested in, if you know what I mean. It just sits there on the shelf. Well, doing very little. It's in moss, and it weighs nothing at the moment, so it's obviously very light. So we'll give that a go. It is Bulbophyllum taiwanense. I would suggest that translates as a bulbophyllum from Taiwan. Next we got the Renanthera. That is doing better than it was in the bathroom. The latest leaf hasn't grown. The next one might do, because hopefully by the time that next leaf gets a hold, the temperatures might be going up in here, either naturally or artificially forced, which is not too far away now. That idea of using the lights and the thermostat with the heater for the daytime temperatures is going to come round rather quickly, because the objective is to get the whole grow room up to 12 hours of proper daylight a lot earlier than it would normally be. And I was looking at when it would normally be with Hannah over the weekend, and you're looking at middle of March. Now that's earlier than I thought. Well, to give me time to gradate the increase in the light from what it is naturally to what it will be naturally, and to force it early, we need to be starting quite soon. Oh, sorry, that's a Coleogene, not a very good plant, but it will grow on. Doesn't come up very often. I can't even say that. If I can be bothered, which I might not be, I'll put a pop up. Right, this is Prima Donna, currently coming into bud. Older cane here, set of 3, 6, 8, 10 buds on that cane. There's another few tucked away here, another 4 there. That's probably it. And then later in the year it will probably produce some buds on that, which is the matured last year's cane, along with this one over here. No sign of new growth at the base yet, but those buds are pushing on, so this gets watered now. This is in the watering routine. It's the first of the Noblies to get to that stage. So I don't absolutely soak this. I'm still going around the edge of the pot, but I am making sure that the water is going down to the bottom of the pot where all the roots are, not just halfway, so that all the roots are getting some water. I mean, this is a flush run. You know, next time possibly will be a week feed, and that will get some. The buds will be, given that I'm only watering my pots due to the low temperatures and short days, these are only getting watered every sort of 10 days or so. So, you know, they're not going to come round again very quickly, is it? I've forgotten what that is. What is that? Dendrobium hybrid. It's a Nobly type. No sign of any buds on that. In fact, the latest two canes have only just finished growing, quite honestly. Needs a repot, still in the pot that it was in when I got it. So this one is in fact sort of resting. So that's all it's going to get. Trickle around the edge. The canes have matured. There's no sign of new growths and no buds. So that's resting. So that's all that one's going to get. So this shelf's in two halves, so I go along one and then go along the other so that I can put them back in the same order I took them off. That way I don't have to think. Coleogyne speciosa Burnham, variety Burnham this one is. We've had blooms on that, I'm sure, but it's not actively growing at the moment. The two latest growths have matured and the new ones haven't started yet, so this isn't going to get much. Nearly poured that on the floor then. See? Not concentrating. Too busy worrying about a blinking camera. Notice, you see me watering in the warmer months, I pour 3 or 4 full glasses into the pot. That just had some round the edge, which is where most of the roots are anyway. So the whole pot is not soaking wet. The middle of that pot didn't get any water because the plant's not growing much. So all it needs is enough water to stop it dehydrating. This one, however, is growing. And this is another Coleogyne. This is the Lawrenceana, I think it is. Lawrenceana. This is maturing growths here and here, so I keep forgetting where the camera is, but it's also producing a new growth here, which is pushing on. So this is in growth and is producing roots, so this needs a little bit more water. It doesn't come out of the clay pot, it's jammed in there at an angle to stop it falling over. It's not in a clay pot for any other reason. It's already in a black pot, and that also hasn't been repotted since I got it. But this is in active growth, so this gets a bit more water. It still doesn't get drowned though, because although it's in active growth, it's got maturing growths and a new one pushing on. It's not the right time of year for it to be in heavy active growth, you know, when it would need an absolute soaking. Right, the last one on this bit of the shelf. Another Coleogyne. See how they group together? This is Orchid, and this one is coming into growth. So if you look here, new growths coming here and here. So this is coming into growth. It's a bit of a climber, and I'm hoping to get this potted prior to the new roots starting on this new growth, so that I can move it back in across the pot. It was badly, not potted by me, but badly potted quite honestly, because it was put offset, which meant all the new growths were going to come around the edge of the pot. Well, that's a bit daft, isn't it? If you move the back of the plant to the edge of the pot, then the new growths come out in the middle, and then you've got an extra year's worth in the pot without worrying about it. And that makes good sense, because the least you disturb the roots on Coleogynes, the better, because some of them really will sulk. I had a Coleogyne once, a linear grower, one of those that only ever grows one new growth, and it grows in a straight line, so it moves across the pot, or along, in this case it was along a mount. And when I got it, I mounted it, and it did nothing for 2.5 years, and then decided to push up a new growth. That's called sulking. Setback, whatever you want to call it. This is my little epidendrum, Comet Valley Orange Star, which has got spikes, or spike, as there is actually only one. Nearly lost that, but it does seem to be coming back into growth now. It's got some active roots down in the pot, so it's sort of doing okay. Well, doing an awful lot better than it was. It's not doing brilliantly, but where people have the right conditions, they just chuck them in the garden as a garden plant, these type of epidendrums. Obviously I can't do that, not in the UK. Well, I could for some months, but then it would have to come back in again. So one. Next we've got one that's possibly not going to survive too much longer and was a silly idea when I bought it. It's a antelope type dendrobium, and this is a warm to hot grower. Now the latest growth here is losing its leaves, and quite honestly that looks like cold damage rather than age. Could be a combination of the two, but the two latest growths are nice bright green and still growing, so perhaps it is age. It does become deciduous, but chances of ever getting that to bloom are pretty slim. This is Vanda plus light required and good heat, and it's not going to get either here, so it's growing quite well. You know, those new growths are pushing on nicely, but the fact that it's an active growth, irrespective of the fact it could do with warm temperatures, given the tiny size of the pot, it gets watered properly, that one. Can't see that ever blooming. It'd be marvellous if it did. And then we've got the Monster Nobile. This is the Sweet Pinky Momoko. And this is jammed in a pot with a rock, and it sits in a big tray with another tray to tilt it so that it basically stays upright, because otherwise it does that and falls over. So very contrived. This currently has a couple of buds up the top there. That would not be enough for me to class this as coming out of its rest period. So this is just the fact that it's a huge plant in what is a relatively small pot. It does get a fair bit of water to stop the latest canes desiccating, but strictly speaking I would class this one as still resting. But there's not a huge amount of point in resting this one, because it blooms when it flipping likes, and more than once a year. So, you know, I just treat it as a normal, normal plant really. Reduce the watering in winter because it's not growing as much or as fast, but otherwise just see if I can get that somewhere where it's not going to fall, if there is such a place. I must do something about this. Fiddling with this every time I get near it is driving me up the wall. We're forgetting our coffee. Right, good stuff. Next we haven't looked at this, we haven't long looked at this. This is the, it's alright, Spectabile. I always want to say species, but it's Spectabile, and it's a nuisance to try and get out of the pot when we've got wet fingers. Got you. Now, a couple of new growths on here. It's never going to do well. It's a warm to hot grower, and it does come from quite arid situations, so it's not a drinker by any means. The fact that it's got a couple of new growths, it's got another new one coming up there, the end of my finger, plus the two it's already got. They don't look like they're going to get to full size. I don't think this is ever going to do much for me. I can't provide the heat it needs. It's also another one that is often found in the open, gets very bright light. So. But we plod away with it, you never know. You know, these things that I keep saying, oh, that'll never bloom, you never know. Orchids can surprise you. Right, this is a Latoria type. So this, effectively, this is Aussie Sweetness crossed with Tapiniense. So it's a hybrid with a species. Never bloomed for me. Keeps producing quite good canes, but they don't bloom. Unknown, but currently it's growing roots to go with the latest cane that it's put up, but it's not actively growing as such because, again, this is not warm enough. The temperatures in here are not good enough for this plant to thrive. They are good enough for it to just about survive. So this doesn't get much water despite having a huge root ball, it just gets some. Just enough to stop it shrivelling and keeling over. This will do better when the temperatures climb up again. So it's a matter of keeping it going till then. Right. And the last one on this shelf, rack, whatever you want to call it, is another big, this is a big coleogyny. Now this is the, it's the Moriana, but it's the variety Magnifica, awarded plant, awarded version of the species basically. Now this has got active new growths coming that potentially will bloom. Now if this new growth is going to bloom, the leaves won't open and the spike will come out the top. It's difficult to see it until it does it, and it can do it over a period of a couple of days. If it's not going to bloom, then the leaves will open and it will carry on to produce the leaves and the bulb will then mature. There's one over here that has done just that. It's progressed, the leaves have opened and the bulb is now forming. That's not going to bloom. The one next to it, oh, I can't really tell. This one may still produce a spike, I'm not sure. And then there's another one round here that's blind as well. This version of this plant is not as easy to flower as the standard species. So getting this one to bloom is not as easy. But it is growing, it's got active roots, so it needs some water. So this one gets watered quite well. You know, there's 3 or 4 growths pushing on here, and these are sizable bulbs and leaves. It's quite a big area to be feeding and watering, if you know what I mean. So this actually gets quite a bit of water. I forgot to bring the tray over, so that'll have to go straight back on the shelf when it's finished dribbling. Now those coleogynes are all up the far end of that shelf. They are in a corner that is the farthest away from the heater, so that's my coolest area. But they are on a top shelf to get reasonable light. But they're also at the back of the grow room, so it's not as good a light as would be over this side. That's got 3 sides of glass. Over in that corner where they are, they've only got 1 side of glass. They're a long way from this side. So that's the position they're in. They're doing okay, but when I see a leaf like that, I always cut it off. I never leave dieback leaves. I always sort of think, whatever the reason, removing it doesn't necessarily stop it happening again, but it removes that bit of the reason why it's doing it. It's a very old leaf, that one. Anyway, so that's that shelf, and a look at the plants on it. So I've got to go careful, I'm leaning over where there's some spikes here, precious spikes as well. Okay, so I'll leave it at that for that video. I might film another shelf in a minute, and these videos can just go into stock, you know, so that when there's a period when there isn't anything to film, I can just pull them out again. So when you see this one, I don't know, but it's currently being filmed on Tuesday the whatever it is, 22nd, 21st, something like that. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.